लाइट्स नहीं चल रही. No. This is not working. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه الصلاة والسلام من كلام له وفيه ينفر من الغفلة وينبه إلى الفرار لله. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Apologize for the delay. I was not able to get the screen up. It's one of those days. We, inshallah, will be starting khutbah number 20 from Nahj al-Balagha. Last week we covered khutbah number 19. And these are short khutbahs, so inshallah we would be able to cover it in one session. This one also is not a very lengthy khutbah by any means, but it's a very short advice, if you want to call it, where Amir al-Mu'mineen, most likely in the early days of his, the first Friday after the Pledge of Allegiance, when he uttered these words, these advices that he gave to, especially to those people who are, in the valleys of ghaflat and ignorance, especially in those early days, or those who have spent the past 3 decades in ghaflat, and now they have come to the realization of who the real Imam is or who the real leader is. But nonetheless, Imam begins by saying, فَإِنَّكُمْ لَوْ قَدْ عَايَنْتُمْ مَا قَدْ عَايَنَ مَنْ مَاتَ مِنْكُمْ. If you could see what has been seen by those of you who have died, so your predecessors, those who have died already, if you could only see what they have seen, meaning what? وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. When the death comes upon you, things become yaqeen, and everything becomes a certainty to you. Wish you could see what they have already seen. They died and they've seen certain things, and you haven't seen those things yet. Imam says, I want to show you those things. I want to make sure that you know what those things are ahead of time. He said, if you could see them, you would be puzzled and you would be troubled. As he uses the word, لَجَزَعْتُمْ وَوَهِلْتُمْ. You would be in the state of jaza, which is trouble, and Imam used the word وَهِلْتُمْ, which is the state which you are puzzled. You don't know what is really going on. And a lot of time you find yourself confused in a situation where you don't know what the reality is. And then Imam continues. So I'll go through each and every one of these segments. There are only 4 or 5 segments. The word wahl, which is used over here, it means fear and terror. Imam uses another word towards the end, jaharatkumul ibar. It literally means that the lessons that you derive from an incident. So every incident that happens in your surrounding should have dual purpose. One, of course, you were struck by this incident. But second, what can you learn from it? One of the philosopher Nietzsche, he said, only if we knew why we must live, we will know how we should live. So if the why part was understood, what is the purpose that I'm sent into this world, then I'll know how to live. The how part of it will become easy for me. But if I don't know the purpose, if the why am I here is still ambiguous to me, then the how part of it would be even that more difficult. And from his speech, Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, soon the veils will be lifted. Soon the veils will be lifted. What are these veils that Imam is talking about? According to this statement, Imam warns all people to wake up from the slumber of heedlessness. You're in this ghaflat. To compensate for their shortcomings in the path of obedience and servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and beware of the dreadful future that lies ahead. So here is a man who on numerous occasions said, Saluni qabla an tafqiduni. Ask me before I'm no longer amongst you. Ask me about the paths of the heavens, let alone the paths of this world. He encourages them to take lessons from the past events and use those lessons to shape your future. Isn't that normal? Like today, as a father, you give the same advice to your children. That we've gone through all this, now we'll tell you with our experience, right? I may not be as educated as you, but I have experience. And there's nothing that you can replace the experience with. That's why the hadith of Prophet of Islam, Hadith Muhammad Mustafa, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, Ash-shaykhu fi baytihi kan-nabi fi ummatihi. He said, an elderly in the house is like a nabi in his community. Nabi guides through his ilm ladun. The elderly guide through their experience that they have seen. So the first part of this speech, which I recited for you, is if you are to see what the deceased have seen after their death, you would wail and be struck with terror. And as a result, you will listen to the truth and obey it. Who wouldn't listen? Once you see the reality, then of course you'll start paying attention. Until you're heedless, then you don't really pay attention. The moment reality strikes, then you start paying attention. From some narrations, it is understood that Imam mentioned this or gave this speech on the first Friday after the Pledge of Allegiance. And according to narration al-Kafi, he first warns the people not to betray their leaders, to preserve the unity of their ranks, and to avoid anything that causes division. This sort of explains what the course Imam himself took in the past 25 years. Right after 25 years, Imam has the reins of the government in his hand. What is he saying? He said, to preserve the unity of their ranks, do not betray your leaders. Some then, of course, misunderstood it. There became a formula in the Ahl Sunnah world that you must obey your ruler even if he is fasiq. That became a very well-known custom and a law in their fiqh and in their usul, that you must obey the ruler even if he is a tyrant one. Obedience to him is because of this reason. So there shouldn't be any division. He then expressed the above statement to emphasize this point further. But of course, Imam is not telling you that you should obey anyone who is a liar and acts on kufr and disbelief. That's a straightforward violation of the ayat of Quran. لا تطع من كان منهم آثما ولا كفورا كافرا. Do not obey those amongst them or those who are sinful and those who are disbelievers. If they become musallat upon you and they are ruling you, are you going to go ahead and listen to them? No. Quran is telling you not to listen to them. Then there isn't any word of advice in hadith that can come and alter that meaning. So the question arises, what is that person? What is it that a person observes after the veil of the physical body is lifted? The eyes of the heart are open, and the realms beyond death are witness, which plunges them into terror, anxiety, and lamentation. We have namaz-e wahshat-e qabr. Wahshat is that terror. What is that terror? What is it that insan sees that there's this anxiety and this lamentation, and this person observes after the physical body has been buried? Scholars have debated this matter, but it is certain that it is the state a person is deeply troubled by two main things. So once you're placed into this grave and the reality becomes certainty for you, right away, what are you able to see? You're able to see two things. Number one, the consequences of your actions. You're able to see them very, very vividly, clearly. They see the results of their deeds laid out before them, and they witness the punishment and the retribution awaiting them. That is something you see right away. Number two, regret of the shortcomings of the past. So they feel profound sorrow for the missed opportunities in the past. They reflect on how they could have utilized and capitalized the time and the resources that they had during their life to provide for, or attain the heights of happiness, but yet squandered these opportunities when they had this opportunity. Worst of all is the realization that there's no way to return and correct these mistakes. You're stuck in this ram now. There's not a push of a button that you couldn't go back now. Right now is where the reality is to make or break. But once you're laid into that 6 feet wide and tall grave, that's the reality. There's no coming back from that. So then Imam continues by saying the next statement, وَلَكِنْ مَحْجُوبٌ عَنْكُمْ مَا قَدْ عَايَنُوا وَقَرِيبٌ مَا يُطْرَحُ الْحِجَابِ. But what they have seen is hidden from you. However, soon the veils will be lifted and you too will witness that dreadful state. Imam wants you to be able to witness that dreadful state right now. Not tomorrow. Not once you're laid into the grave. Not once your eyes are closed. He wants you to see it today. He wants you to be able to witness it today. What is the skill when you see it after the death? Everyone will see it. Whether mu'min or kafir. Whether a believer or disbeliever. The reality of the fact is that you as a believer should be able to see it right now. And not wait it out until certainty becomes clear for everyone. So the fact that you remain heedless, attached to this material world, and oblivious to your position in this life is due to a veil that separates you from those dreadful realms and the perilous stages. However, do not forget that ignoring these realities does not erase them. You can't keep ignoring something. There's a past that is attached to you. There's a mistake that you have made. There are things that you have done that remain with you. You can't just keep on forgetting. You can't keep on putting them into the back burner. We'll worry about it later. We'll worry about it later. We'll worry about it later. You keep on procrastinating, it keeps on coming back to you. But then soon as the veils will be lifted, and you'll see everything. But then neither terror, anxiety, nor this lamentation will be of any benefit, and the doors of repentance, which remain open today, will no longer be accessible. So here a question arises, why does God not lift these veils during the worldly life? Why wait until we are laid into the grave and our eyes are closed? Why not just open it up? Lift these veils right now. Make everything clear for us. Why not lift them so that people are awakened and come out of their senses? Why doesn't that happen? Well, that's a very interesting question, and that's a question which is addressed in Quran. أَلْهَاكُمُ التَّكَاثُرُ حَتَّى زُرْتُمُ الْمَقَابِرَ كَلَّا سَوْفَ تَعْلَمُونَ ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَوْفَ تَعْلَمُونَ كَلَّا لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عِلْمَ الْيَقِينِ لَا تَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ. That's the answer. لَا تَرَوُنَّ الْجَحِيمِ. That you will most surely see the Jahannam. When? Tomorrow? No, tomorrow everyone will see the Jahannam. La tarawunna al-jahim right here. In this worldly life. If you're able to see Jannat and Jahannam in this worldly life, then that's a skill. And that means you see the reality. And can any mu'min say that I don't know the realities of Jannat? That I'm unaware of the horrific nature of Jahannam? Can anyone say that? With all the ayat and the ahadith that we have from Masumeen? Yeah, a dead person from my parents, from my grandparents, from my great-grandparents has not informed me of that after dying. They cannot come back and communicate with me. But the Masumeen and this book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has informed you of all of that. So, the answer is hinted in the verses of Quran. If the veil were lifted, people were to perceive these realities in a tangible and absolute manner, then even the smallest transaction or the smallest of the transgressions that they have done would do what? Would make them realize the severe punishment in this world, and no excuse will remain. Surah Anam, ayat number 8 talks about it. وَلَوْ أَنزَلْنَا مَلَكًا لَقُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ ثُمَّ لَا يُنْظَرُونَ. And even if we had sent down an angel, no matter what have been settled, no respite would have been granted to them. Meaning what? Yahin pe jo hai wo, aapka hisab kitab ho jata. The accountability will start happening right here. So therefore, Imam moves forward with the next statement. He said, قَرِيبٌ مَا يُطْرَحُ الْحِجَابِ. Soon the veils will be lifted. Emphasize that no matter how long a person's life may seem, it is very small compared to the entire worldly time, the vastness of the worldly time, and the boundless duration of the hereafter. Get to live for 100 years? That's very minor compared to the boundless nature of the Qiyamah. Then another part of the speech, Imam highlights an important point regarding this matter. Although you have not seen the ram after the death with your own eyes, which is, of course, all of us can attest to. If you haven't seen, Hollywood can try its best. Other media can try their best to display and depict, Qiyamah for us. But we haven't seen it with our own eyes. Sufficient evidence has been provided to you. So you can't say that you haven't really been provided with sufficient. It says, وَلَقَدْ بُصِّرْتُمْ. Imam says this. إِنْ أَبْصَرْتُمْ وَأُسْمِعْتُمْ إِنْ سَمِعْتُمْ وَهُدَيْتُمْ إِنْ اهْتَدَيْتُمْ. If you open the eyes of insight, the means of seeing are available to you. If you possess a listening ear, the truth has been conveyed to you. And if you ask and seek guidance, the means of guidance have been provided for you. They're out there. These means are out there. You're not in total dark. You can't say, well, I have no idea. This is what to expect tomorrow. No, out of all the people, you have absolute idea. You have complete knowledge, or to near complete knowledge what to expect, or at least enough to know what to expect over there. So there's no excuse remains for you. And you are never justified in treading the wrong path. Never. At least a mu'min is not. Although the realities of the world after death are concealed behind the veil, but you still have no excuse to deny. Why? You were made aware of them through three means. Number one, through lessons of reflection that you witness in this world with your own eyes. Things that are happening in your surrounding. You witness it. Those who are pounding their chest with pride and arrogance due to the illusion that they have power today. How many dictators we've seen come down in the past 50 years? And so that serves as a lesson of reflection. Number two, through the remnants of the pharaohs before you, fara'ina, those who bragged about ana rabbukumul ala, I'm your biggest Lord. You've seen what happened to them. Number three, crumbling graves of your own ancestors. Your forefathers' graves are crumbling. In fact, if you dig them up, you'll find merely some bones, if it's still there, are evident, and the grim fate of the ruins left behind by the sinful and the arrogant nations in various corners of the world. They serve as lessons for you. So don't be in the slumber. Thus, each of these three phases mentioned earlier point to one of these three sources of evidence. Your hiss, the senses, the experimentation, naql, the historical events carried out, mentioned in Quran, in Ahadith, by the words of Ma'asumeen, what happened in the time of Hazrat Musa, what happened in the time of Hazrat Isa, what happened in the time of Ibrahim and Nuh, and so on and so forth. Those historical events. Number three, aql, reasoning. Use all three. Use your senses, use the manqulat, those things which have been narrated, and use your own intellect. Then in the subsequent sentence, which from the final part of his speech, Imam elaborates on the concept that presents 3 more points. So these are the last 3 points. Number 1, he says, وَبِحَقٍّ. After mentioning all of this, after getting your attention, after sort of instilling some fear in your hearts, then Imam says this. He said, وَبِحَقٍّ أَقُولُ لَكُمْ لَقَدْ جَاهَرَتْكُمْ الْإِبَرِ. Then, truly, I say to you, the lesson of reflection have openly presented themselves to you. These events, which fill the pages of human history and of which we ourselves have witnessed numerous examples in our brief lives, 70, 80, 90 years, are not hidden, nor are they obscure to us. They do not require extensive investigation or a very intellectual, philosophical, sophisticated mindset. No. Anyone with basic understanding of life would be able to take heed from it. The remnants of pharaohs and the Nimrods and the Caesars and the Khusros, who once ruled with astonishing power and authority, but today have left behind nothing but dust, are evident everywhere. Number 2, man says, وَزُجِرْتُمْ بِمَا فِيهِ مُزْدَجِرْ. This is, again, inspiration from the ayat of Quran. You have been forbidden from what is prohibited in a clear and an impactful manner. This prohibition may be through the language of creation, zaban-e-takween that we have, zaban-e-tashri', the religious and the takweeniyat arising from the history, stories, remnants of the past nations buried in the earth. As Quran states, وَلَقَدْ جَاءَهُمْ مِنَ الْأَنْبَاءِ مَا فِيهِ مُزْدَجِرٌ. Surah Qamar, I believe, yes, ayat number 4, that indeed there has come to them enough of the news of the previous nations to deter them. In this way, sufficient proof has been provided and established. Third and the final statement, and I'll conclude with it. Imam states, وَمَا يُبَلِّغُ عَنِ اللَّهِ بَعْدَ رُسُلِ السَّمَاءِ إِلَّا الْبَشَرِ. No one after the messengers of the heavens, meaning the angels, they are referred to as the messengers of the heaven, will deliver the message from God except humans. So this refers to the question, what are you waiting for? Are you expecting the angels, Hazrat Jibreel, to come down to you personally, to each and every single one of your houses, knock on the door, and tell you and deliver the message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Bhai Sahab, this is the message. When will you wake up from this slumber? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is communicating with you. Are you expecting angel of heaven to descend upon you and recite the divine verses himself? You're not going to recite them yourself? You're not going to understand them yourself? Just as the skeptics among the disbelievers during the time of Rasulullah, he said, why do you not bring the angels to us if you are truthful? They used to say the same thing to Rasulullah. Rasulullah would be propagating and preaching with his own word, with his own tongue, with the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from this Quran. They would reply, لَوْ مَا تَأْتِينَ بِالْمَلَائِكَةِ إِن كُنْتَ مِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ. I wish you came with malaika to support your cause. But you're alone in your defining all this. Allah said, مَا نُنَزِّلُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ وَمَا كَانُوا إِذَا مُنْظَرِينَ. He said, we do not send down angels except with truth for a decisive purpose. And then they would not be granted respite. So this highlights that angels do not descend to satisfy baseless demands of our idle curiosity. They only appear to establish truth. If they do descend and people still refuse to believe, they will be immediately subjected to the divine punishment without any further delay. Remember that when Jibreel Amin came down to assist Rasulullah in Taif, the offer was there. Oh Rasulullah, if you want, I can bring these 2 mountains together and people within it will be crushed in no time. But Rasulullah responded by saying what? That I've been sent as rahmatan lil alameen, and I have not been sent as means of severe punishment for people. I've been sent as a means of rahmat for the people. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.